So Open Data Saves Lives, it took a long time to come together and then came together really quickly. So right at the start of Open Data Institute Leeds, ODI Leeds, we had lots of people talk to us for the health sector, but it was just too big and too scary and just took forever for people to talk to us. And then 2 years ago, NHS Digital started as a sponsor, NHSX then started as a sponsor. And that world had got open and open data as something that they could fix. And then Mark came to Northern Lands 1, which was 18 months ago at ODI Leeds, and talked about his work and talked about how data saves lives. And then we talked, myself and Mark, and said, okay, we need to supercharge what we're doing. So that was when Open Data Saves Lives started, and that started in 2019, so before COVID, before all this happened. And we took it as a way of setting something up, which was Open Data Saves Lives, which allowed the health sector to start talking to each other in a safe space about open data and open innovation without the normal reasons for them not to talk about this stuff. So we took away all of their preconceptions and all of their supposed reasons that they didn't share and didn't do things together, and said, okay, open data saves lives. Why would you not?
I've got a background in health. Paul's got a background in open data. And I think COVID has exemplified more than anything how you need to quickly get these things together. And you can always talk about these things at quite a high level, but I think it's always good to pepper them with real examples. So we've done some work during COVID where we've linked police data to health data, emergency department data, to try and analyse domestic abuse, because that was perceived as a really high risk issue for COVID. And things that took a long time to agree in terms of information governance before COVID have become quicker and simpler. And there's some really, really good cross-working, but you need an appetite to think that data can be linked and used for good. And Paul's technical expertise and hopefully my health knowledge have kind of come together to do that. In terms of the vision, there's a few things we want to change. We want to free as much data as we can. We want to challenge kind of existing data models around data ownership, get as much data out there as possible for people to use. And then the big one for me, two big things, is one, make the case for linking data. So in that police example, and next, to actually encourage people to share their data for good. There's a sort of simple philosophical point in there about sharing your data for good. So Paul and I both had COVID, and we communicated every day about symptoms and how we felt, and that is a massive untapped research database.
The end of that is that the other part of the mission is to get people to use the web as it was intended, and to publish what they're doing, publish their data, and then share their data and code afterwards. Make the biggest impact you can with your work and stop hiding stuff.
Too often, a lot of data that'd be really useful is hidden behind usernames and passwords that, for example, I can get to because I'm in the NHS and Paul can't because he's just a researcher. And there'll be other data sets that he can get to that I can't to improve health. And Paul and I want to try and break some of that down.
Anyways, but the big thing is to start people to think about the solution rather than their data and their day job and what's going to happen, who's giving permission, is to focus on the reason you're involved in this is to make a difference to people's lives. And if you are sharing data with someone and nothing ever comes back and there's no impact, or, we need to make sure that happens. We talk about three things. We talk about writing a story on the web about what you're doing and letting other people join in. Sharing a technical blog of describing what it is and making it clear about how it can be used and deployed, and then sharing your data and your code. So why do we need to employ a service provider numerous times across the NHS where we know there are professionals and people who can deploy the same thing if only they had access to the data and code to do it? So we're talking about making a massive difference to the way in which data is shared across people in the health sector.
So we want to do four things. Every single data set that people provide in the NHS, they never see again. So we want to encourage everyone to share all their data at an appropriate level of governance, anonymised, pseudonymized as appropriate, with each other so that they can build sensible benchmarks. So the NHS sends a lot of data into a machine every night and nothing comes back down the pipes. So we want to challenge that and give people more data to do more analysis. The second thing we want to do is to break up the sort of traditional models of data ownership so that any data sets we think we want to get to are not hidden behind kind of quite outdated commercial models. The third thing is to make a positive information governance argument. So in that example of linking police data to health data to analyse domestic abuse, we want to encourage people to start with the yes rather than a no, if that makes sense. What good will come of linking these data sets, not what harm will come or what risk is there associated with that. And the last one, which we're calling share.data, is simply to start to tap into that huge market for people sharing data altruistically for good. So you and I might just, if the three of us on this call just counted how many steps we took yesterday and Paul took the most, that might encourage me to go for a bike ride today. The whole point of the symptom trackers are to encourage people to put their data alongside other people's data. So COVID has made a really, really strong argument for altruistically sharing securely symptom and health and fitness data alongside each other, and that hasn't been done properly yet. Very, very pleasantly surprised during COVID to have met some fantastic people who've taken things that the government should have been doing, like publishing data, linking it, correlating it, graphing it, mapping it, providing code, that have literally done at their kitchen tables or in their bedrooms. So there's people that I've come in contact with that I didn't know before that have built better COVID data sets than the government are putting out. And the government has kind of strangled itself in process and IT issues and IG issues. And in the meantime, perfectly sensible, anonymized data has been put out there by some fantastic developers that I've met through the Open Data Institute.
I have been really pleased with the way in which a lot of organisations have left their, can I say bullshit, behind and focused on how are we going to fix this problem. And then also at the end of the we've ended up with, this is sort of the end of 6 months of running Open Data Saves Lives, actually considering how they're going to do things differently in the future. So there's, Mark talked about the individuals, and we've got so much to learn from how people have fixed stuff and built stuff that works, and we need to use that and not lose all of that great work. And then also institutions are starting to think, actually, do you know what, the way we set ourselves up was just setting ourselves up for failure, not to solve a problem. So the whole thing about geography within the NHS, the whole thing about different organisations not being able to talk to each other because of rules and legal stuff that they'd set up. None of this stuff was set up to fix stuff. It was set up to protect individuals or organisations in their bureaucracies. So that's what I am really excited about, is about not smashing it up, but just getting rid of all the stuff we don't need so we can focus on stuff that makes a difference. So Open Data Saves Lives is going to continue. And we're building something that can give it sustainability and long-term view. We don't know. I mean, everything's moving so quickly. But ODI Leeds and Beautiful Information are going to collaborate in building something out of Open Data Saves Lives. We're going to turn it into a thing that can win projects, that can receive funding, that can make a big difference. And what we've realised is that we're going to do that much better together with a structure. So short term, we're going to set something up. We're still not quite sure about the structure of that, but it's going to be an entity, a thing that can receive money, can receive funding, can receive resources, because it might not necessarily be, but be that entity, that convening power house that can make a difference. And Leeds and Kent are quite nice things to collaborate, because it's not the usual suspects. So we're going to go and find some friends, we're going to find some projects, and we're going to deliver them. And then who knows what's going to happen. You know, we're going to save a load of lives, and we're going to create a load of data, and we're going to make a massive difference. But other than that, I can't predict what we're going to do in the next 5 years. I haven't got a clue.
So when we set Beautiful Information up, we partly did it as an experiment to see if it was possible that the public and private sector could collaborate in a slightly different way, because you had this kind of outdated idea of public sector good, private sector bad. And I think what's really interesting with the new business model that Paul and I are going to create with Open Data Saves Lives is to run it as a commercial not-for-profit that generates altruistic good. So it will employ people and it will create jobs, because if it doesn't, Paul and I will have failed. It won't live on grant money. It will behave as a business, win projects, and run interesting, fun events. And we used to have a kind of moniker which we quite liked, which was, I've forgotten it now, learn, enjoy, do good. And I really like that. And I think we've lost that a little bit in our branding. And that for me personally is what I'm kind of interested in doing. It's really interesting. I meet some really interesting new people. I think, as Paul said, it's got big enough that it needs to exist formally now, so that it can receive money, it can employ people, it can file a tax return if it needs to, but it can be named on some quite large bids, which is what we're starting to do already. In terms of a 5 or 10 year plan, I'd like it to have a strong link with the universities, but also be a good arbiter between the industry partners that the NHS has been particularly poor at dealing with. That can be big pharma, it can be big IT companies. Those types of companies will be desperate for us to help them free their data as well. And I think there's a really interesting niche for us to exist as a commercial not-for-profit to help manage the relationship between three things: the NHS, industry, and academia.